Today we're taking a look at the best champions for every role in patch 13.7. You guys seem to enjoy the new format last time round, so again we're including 5 different categories of champions for each role, which are God tier, low elo, high elo, underrated, and the one to watch out for. Now let's get straight into it and start off with that top lane. And our God tier choice is Kled. Now this guy just can't seem to stop winning right now, boasting a huge win rate across almost every single rank, and this has been happening for a while. Kled has some of the highest early game damage in the game from the top lane and offers such an amazing ability to solo carry games with his crazy snowball potential and his ability to stomp lanes beyond repair. Kled turns into a split pushing nightmare in the mid to late game, or if he decides to, he can just roam and ult backlines and take them out in seconds. He does have a bit of a weird kit and a spicy playstyle, but he's actually not quite as difficult as people think, and once you do get a feel for it, you're going to be rewarded instantly. Our low elo pick is Mobalytics, who is just a champion who's received buff after buff for such a long time now, and people have started to realise that he's a little bit OP. Mobalytics has always been an amazing answer to so many different AD top laners. It's just always been his thing, shut them down and prevent them from stomping and split pushing out of control. But he's just so strong right now that it just doesn't stop there. He himself can stomp and slap, and before you know it, he's unkillable and unstoppable with that ultimate too. Yes, Mobalytics' ultimate is just such a fantastic teamfighting engaging ability, and even if you do fall slightly behind, you're always going to be useful because of it. It really is so satisfying watching those bruisers do 0 damage to you after you've got a few items, and if that wasn't satisfying enough, a 5-man ultimate should do the trick. For you high elo top lane players, we've got to include Riven in this video. She's already in a fantastic spot, especially so at higher ranks, and the Death Stance changes introducing 15 ability haste is just going to make her even stronger. Riven is one of the most rewarding champions in the game to invest time into. You have so much to learn with animation cancelling and stringing together your abilities and combos, but once you do learn all of these things, you can just improve your outplay potential further and further. Riven is the perfect champion to flex with. You can turn fights around against all of the odds, you can solo carry so fast with your split pushing, dueling and burst damage, and if you do start learning Riven, before you know it, you'll be mastery level 7 and probably well on your way to some seriously impressive ranks. For our underrated top laner this week, we've gone for Singed, and honestly if he doesn't get nerfed anytime soon, he probably has the right to take this place on these videos each and every time. Singed offers such a unique playstyle which is just surprisingly effective, and this is easily reflected in his win rate so far this season. Singed is all about running around, spamming poison, spamming laugh, and flinging people all over the place, and for some reason, it just works. In lane, you can shut down most matchups by timing your fling properly, and the anti-mobility from your W comes in handy too. You farm and harass with your poison, and if you get into any trouble, press your R and simply just run away. Then when it comes to roaming or team fighting, your job is to dive into backlines, fling back those carries and laugh as they can't do anything but die to your teammates. And after you've done that, just keep sprinting and flinging as many enemies as you can. Singed is a lot of fun and he's actually pretty OP, so give it a go. Finally, the one to watch in that top lane is Akshan. Now he has been performing super duper well for such a long time, and this just doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. He has brutal poke and nasty harass in the lane phase against those low range matchups. He has excellent kill threat early game, he has fantastic mobility with those E resets, and don't forget that he can roam and gank elsewhere too with that stealth. Akshan has all the tools he needs to carry games and come out on top this patch, and we haven't even mentioned the fact that he can revive his whole team in a teamfight too. He is definitely one of those champions that everyone always seems to forget about, but then you play against him once and quickly remember just how good and scary he can be. Well, let's move into the jungle now, and our god tier choice just has to be the same one as last time round. Yes, you guessed it, it's Jarvan. No nerfs this week means he's going to continue being one of the best picks you can play in the whole game. Jarvan has insane early ganks, solid damage, great initiation and engage, and he just doesn't really have that many weaknesses. He can gank super often and so early on, and if his enemies don't have those summoner spells, he's going to kill them time and time again. He can also feel very difficult to shut down too once he gets a lead due to that bruiser durability he gets from his itemization, alongside the damage he gets from it too. Now, I'm sure you guys are already banning Jarvan or playing it by now, but if not, why not? Our low elo jungle pick for this patch is Zac, who's definitely quietened down a bit compared to the start of the season. He's been here, there and everywhere in multiple roles so far this year, and now he is slowly settling back into that jungle. You just can't really go too far wrong with Zac at any rank really, but at those lower ranks he's still just having the best of times. He has so much to offer with his devastating long-range unconventional ganks with his E, his multiple target CC and disruption with his Q and ultimate, and then you've got that snowballing damage and survivability too. He's not only relatively easy to pick up and learn, but he also has a fairly high skill ceiling with the different ways you can combo those abilities together to take down your enemies quickly. Zac is a lot of fun, and now he's not quite as broken, he's not getting banned or picked anywhere near as much. So maybe if you have forgotten about Zac recently, here's a reminder that he still exists. For high elo, you probably guessed it, but it's going to be Rengar, who's just stomping so many high elo games in both the top lane and the jungle. He is a pick who is just so much more terrifying in the right hands, and his versatile kit allows for so many creative ways to outplay enemies and dominate games. If Rengar gets fed in the early to mid game, he becomes an absolute nightmare to deal with. He has a lot of mobility if he's fighting around brushes, he's got tons of burst damage, good survivability in his W, good CC, and tons of damage. Yes, that much damage, we had to mention it twice. Rengar can carry games on his own no problemo, as long as he plays it correctly and plays it smart enough. Catching out rotating isolated targets is what he does best, and fighting around objectives and invading enemy junglers allows him to really live up to his true potential. Every single jungle main just seems to love playing Rengar, and if you are good enough on him, he's definitely one of the best to go for. Our underrated pick in the jungle is Rek'Sai, who's actually got one of the lowest pick rates for any meta jungler at the moment. She's all about those early ganks and her ability to dominate games before the mid game even starts. She's got very creative gank paths with those tunnels, and this also means her map mobility is another one of her biggest strengths too. She can tunnel around the map one-shotting enemies, and before you know she's got a Prowler's Claw, and every time you see her, you're dead in just a few seconds. Rek'Sai's early game ganking aggressive playstyle does take some practice, but if you can put it off consistently, she's just such a brilliant pocket pick to play with. So give her a go if you haven't picked her up already. Finally, our one to watch this patch is Graves. Yes, Graves has been buffed in patch 13.7, and this one is always one to watch out for whenever he gets buffed. Every time Graves is relevant, he's one of the best junglers in the game, especially so when being played by people who really know how to use him properly. Graves clears and farms very quickly, he's amazing at dueling and invading the enemy jungler, and if he gets a lead, he can take both sides of the jungle and take down anyone that tries to come and stop him. He is a pretty unique tanky marksman with great scaling and crazy burst damage. He's also got that smoke screen in his W which can be huge in those clutch moments, and if he gets the ball rolling early, he'll stomp games ultra fast. Good Graves players are not ones to be messed with, and with the changes in patch 13.7, get ready to play against a lot of them again. Moving down to the mid lane now, and our god tier choice just has to be Anivia. She's easily been one of the best mid laners all season. Her itemization is solid, and she just offers insane amounts of damage, utility, and control. She is just such a well-rounded and consistent choice to go for in that mid lane. She fares well into a variety of different matchups, and as long as she doesn't get too far behind, she was always going to be a threat. Anivia scales super well. She has amazing wave clear, great burst damage, and she's also fairly difficult to shut down too, due to the defensive nature of her itemization with items like Seraphs and Zhonya's, and of course her Anivia passive too. Now she's pretty easy to pick up and learn, but she does have a super high skill ceiling too. So the more time you invest into learning Anivia, the more you will be rewarded. Now there probably will be some nerfs coming for her sometime soon, but for now, just keep abusing her. For our low elo pick, we've gone for Ahri, and she's had a string of buffs and been a little bit underrated for a while now despite her incredible popularity. Ahri's win rate has been creeping up for some time now, and she's honestly such a tricky champion to play against when she's being played well. She's got some pretty tasty mobility once she's level 6, she's got those charms in clutch moments, and her ability to burst enemies down whilst also keeping on the move is a bit underappreciated. Ahri's also a fairly safe mid laner to go for. I mean, like every champion, she does have those difficult matchups, but generally speaking, as long as you can get to level 6 without dying too often, you're going to be able to escape most of the danger. And if your lane really is that difficult, you can just roam around and gank other lanes instead, as her kit is so good at doing so. Ahri is a ton of fun, which is one of the main reasons she's always been a fan favourite, so maybe it's time to start playing her more often again. For high elo, we've chosen Qiyana, and there's just nothing that quite compares to how impressive a good Qiyana player can be. Qiyana has immense mobility and damage, and when comboed up perfectly, she is a slippery sucker that deals unfathomable amounts of burst damage. Yes, Qiyana is the queen of overkilling her enemies in that mid lane. She dashes in, uses 15 abilities in 0.5 seconds, and before you know it, you're dead before you can even blink. Qiyana has a lot to bring to the table throughout games as well though. She's got that constant stealth to slip in and out of fights with their damage, but those huge late game ultimates can be so rewarding too. So if you do have the skills and mechanics to pull Qiyana off regularly, there's not many better. The most underrated mid laner to pick this patch is Galio. Yes, Galio is a pretty niche pick, but you simply cannot argue with his effectiveness. He has brilliant amounts of crowd control, decent damage and wave clear, and his ultimate can be game changing if you roam and use it at the right time. His gank setup is a dream for any jungler or support who wants to roam around, and if you combine Galio with certain other champions who can complement him, he just becomes instantly 10 times better. Galio's teamfight presence, his control throughout all stages of the game, and all that CC he brings makes him a very respectable pick. Just make sure you don't play against champions with 10 dashes each, or they might be a little bit hard to lock down. And finally, our pick to watch out for this week in the mid lane is Katarina. Now, it was pretty hard to pick between Yasuo and Kata this week, as both of these are incredibly popular picks. But in the end, we just had to go for Katarina. She has a new prestige skin, her AP ratios have been buffed, and there is a stupid amount of Cat 1 tricks that have been waiting for this moment for so long and are raring to go. Katarina can snowball and roam like no other champion, and if you lack the CC throughout games to shut her down, she can easily run riot and destroy your entire team with her low cooldowns, high mobility, and stupidly high AoE burst damage. Katarina's ban rate is likely to shoot straight back up as it always does every time she's viable. But if you can get hold of her this patch and you're good enough to play her perfectly, there's not many that will be quite as lethal as she can be. Well, let's move over to those AD carries now, and our god tier choice is going to have to be Jinx again. I'm sure you guys are all already aware of just how strong she is, as she's currently stupidly popular and carries a pretty high ban rate too. Jinx just scales like no other AD carry in the game at the moment, and her late game AoE damage, her range, and her resets make her an absolute necessity to take out as soon as possible. You can pick Jinx at the moment with a big variety of supports, and she fares well in the majority of drafts as well, even despite her biggest weakness of being super vulnerable in the early game. What you've really got to do is make sure you don't int in the lane phase and you come out in the mid game all guns blazing ready for the carnage to begin. If you are maining AD carry, you should definitely be playing Jinx already, because she is truly up there with some of the best and most prioritized picks in the whole game this patch. Our low elo AD carry to play this week is Jhin, who is honestly just such a consistent and reliable AD carry to go for. Now, don't get me wrong, you obviously have to be careful of dive and hard engage, but in terms of really being up there with some of the best in his role, he's just always present. Jhin offers a solid performance throughout all stages of any game. He's got great poke and damage in the lane phase, he can weave in and out of fights in the mid game offering huge burst, and in that late game he can genuinely one-shot his enemies from really far away. The great thing about Jhin 2 though is you can always contribute even if the early game doesn't quite go to plan. You got long range damage and pick potential, and even those traps can make the difference too. For our high elo pick in the AD carry position, we've gone for Twitch, who's just been having such an amazing year. AP Twitch has slowly been dying down recently, but AD Twitch has never really gone anywhere. The Rat has had a very consistently high win rate all season, and with no nerfs seemingly on the way, this just isn't going to change. Like a lot of other AD carries, Twitch can have a bit of a tough time in those early levels, but with each item he just gets scarier and scarier, and before you know it he's opening up from stealth into teams and obliterating all 5 enemies in just a few seconds. Yes, those ultimate ambushes are devastating, and the kiting and stealth and AoE burst is just so satisfying to use. High elo players are also more adept at abusing his stealth mechanic too to roam around the map like no other AD carry in the game can really do. Twitch is still a great pick at every single rank, but just the top players are definitely utilising him best. The most underrated AD carry you can play right now is Kog'Maw, and people have just not really been playing enough of him at all this season. Kog'Maw has maintained a very steady but understated win rate this year, and if you do manage to pick him in the right games with the right support, he can feel a little bit broken. The infamous Lulu Kog'Maw is still very difficult to beat in the later stages of the game, and it doesn't really matter what type of target Kog'Maw comes up against because he'll just melt them all from 2 screens away. The one thing that Kog'Maw really lacks is mobility, but with Flash Ghost and a smooth lane phase and an enchanter by your side, you'll be sprinting around teamfights shredding down your enemies before they can even get close. Finally, our AD carry to watch out for this week is Ashe. Ashe has been slowly turning into a top tier marksman recently, and we're not far away from people realising that she's up there with the best of the bot lane. Ashe offers great poke and damage throughout the lane phase, she's amazing with those enchanters like Melio or utility machines like Thresh, and she really does bring a lot to the table. Ashe's ultimate is an amazing ability for any AD carry to have, and if you can consistently land those arrows, you're going to have a great time. If kiting back, dishing out tons of damage and channeling your inner Legolas is your jam, then make sure you play some Ashe this patch. Let's finish off with the best supports to play this patch, and our god tier choice just has to be Senna. Yes, after a few too many buffs, Senna has risen straight back up to the top of the pack. She starts off with some solid poke and sustain in lane, and then as the game progresses, she just gets more and more oppressive. There are not many more supports or even champions that scale as well as Senna does, and her damage and range in that late game is truly what nightmares are made of. Senna offers fantastic utility throughout games, her E's unique invisibility, her WCC, and her global ultimate too. But it all comes down to her damage that she brings from so far away that makes her so hard to beat. As long as you don't fall too far behind in the lane phase and you can keep on your toes, Senna is one of the best choices to play in the game right now, so give her a go. Our low elo pick is Sona this patch, and the sheer amount of utility that she offers throughout games is just unrivaled. Late game Senna is one of the best supports to have on any team sheet, with relentless sustain, constant poke, and some other great boosts and buffs alongside that team fighting ultimate too. Just focus on keeping yourself alive, position safely as much as you can, and spam those abilities to keep your team healthy and the enemies at bay. Sona offers all these same strengths in the lane phase too, and can be very hard to force out of lane as long as she sits far enough back. She's got a great setup for ganks with the ultimate, and she's so easy to play as well. which is one of the many reasons why she's always been so successful at low ranks. For high elo, we've got Pyke, who's completely the opposite to Sona. Pyke is all about landing those big skill shots consistently, comboing your abilities together, and basically just outplaying everybody on a regular basis. Pyke has the ability to destroy the lane phase with his early aggression, the hooks, the flash stuns, and the stealth roaming too allow him to destroy certain bot lanes pretty damn often, especially if the player behind him really knows what they're doing. And then you get out of lane and it's time to float around those fights and execute enemies down with the ultimate resets. And this is just what makes Pyke so much fun. One good fight is all it takes for Pyke to take full responsibility of the cleanup crew, and those high elo players are the ones that can do this best. Pyke might take some practice, but if you can get the hang of him, he will always be a fantastic choice. Our underrated support this week is Rel, and let's be honest, we could probably say this about Rel every single time we make one of these videos. Rel's success rate just speaks for itself really, and despite her consistently low popularity, she always seems to be popping off by those who actually play her. She may have a somewhat one-dimensional kit, but it just works so well when it's being played right. And it largely comes down to the AD carry alongside her, or the matchup she's against too. She offers boatloads of CC and initiation at the expense of being heavily punished when she misplays, with her outrageously low movement speed. However, the less you make those mistakes, the more you realise how strong she can actually be. Rel can completely decimate those bot lane 2v2s early, and with the right AD carry alongside her, it can feel completely unplayable for her enemies. She's definitely one of the more unique supports that takes a good bit of understanding to pull off well, but if you can get it right, you're in for a treat. A one to watch for the support role this week is Alistar. He's another one of these champions that just seems to be getting buff after buff. And one of these days it's all going to catch up to him. Alistar may be fairly predictable in his combos, but his playstyle does not have to share the same fate. The Carnage Cow has the ability to roam around the map, hex flash over random walls, and knock back enemies into his teammates. And it'll get to the point where his enemies can never feel safe even under their own towers. He can tower dive for years with that ultimate, he can constantly CC people, and tenacity won't even make a difference. And if he gets a bit fed, he's going to do whatever he wants, wherever he wants, and probably put his teammates on his back at the same time. Alistar's unique ability to carry takes a bit of getting used to, but after a few good games, if you do get good at him, you will understand just how crazy he can be. Well, that brings us to the end of our selection of champions for all different roles in patch 13.7. We hope you enjoyed this video guys, and don't forget to check out Mobalytics to help you improve when playing any one of these champions. From constantly updated item builds from the pros to counters, combos, matchup guidance, personal performance stats, in-game highlights, and so much more. Thank you for watching everybody, and we'll see you all in the next one. Take care.